Hi, I'm Jonathan Eschner, NEA Salina Co-President and also Director of Political Activities for NEA Salina. This short presentation is to explain why you should vote on November 6, 2018. One of the major reasons that I encourage people to vote is that 76% of funding for Salina Public Schools comes directly from the state of Kansas. Any small change in funding from the state will directly impact the types of classrooms that our students see and learn from each and every day. Another reason why is that Kansas has now just increased funding after a decade of cuts or no increases after you adjust for inflation. This chart comes from the Kansas Association of School Board, in which they have a lot of stuff going on. So I want to take a quick moment to explain what's going on. The dotted red line shows funding from the state over our period of time, and you can look at starts in 1990 and goes all the way up to our present time of 2018. The dotted blue line shows the gap between the amount of money that districts spent on each student. And you can tell that over time, that gap has increased dramatically. The solid red line and solid blue line show the same when adjusted for inflation using the consumer price index. The solid red line shows the amount of money coming in from the state, like the dotted line, only adjusted for 2018 dollars. And then the blue line shows expenditures from the state, from school districts, from school districts when adjusted for inflation. You can tell that there are periods of times in which funding was flat or dropped, and then you had individuals and districts say that the Kansas Supreme Court, or asked the Kansas Supreme Court to say that the Kansas Constitution was not being followed and that increased funding was needed to provide adequate and equitable education. One of the reasons why that is in our Kansas Constitution is that there was a concern by our districts in the middle of the state and least populous areas like our area or in western Kansas that their students would not have the same opportunities as students in perhaps the Wichita area or the Kansas City area. So they passed that all into the Kansas Constitution by 2/3 majority of the legislature and by popular vote that should be added in, that all schools should be adequately and equitably funded within the state of Kansas so that all students have similar opportunities to each other, have schools that they can attend. So every time you see kind of a drop or a plateau in the funding, individuals would say Kansas is not providing adequate and equitable funding, in which the governor and the legislator are responsible for. Our third and co-equal branch of government came in and said that schools should be funded because the Kansas Constitution is not being followed. So that you can tell most recently that funding was increasing. In 2018, you had the Great Recession, and then you had the Brownback years in which funding was dropped, especially when you adjust for inflation. Districts were not able to continue to provide the services, the same opportunities to students throughout the state. So then you had a lawsuit filed by individuals in which they said that their students were not having an adequate and equitable funding. The law is for increased funding from the state to districts. The big question mark is, will that continue? And it will really depend on those that are elected to the Kansas legislature and governor. You have people out there advocating that Kansas schools have too much money and that there needs to be some cuts. So that's another reason why to vote, is to help determine what the future will be for that. This graphic comes from the Salina Public Schools business office, in which they're showing how state dollars, that 76%, and how local taxes are spent in the classroom. So if you look at this, it breaks it down into various areas in which our funding is broken down, and then this gray area that is you, the classroom teacher or instructors that are providing that direct learning in the classroom. So that is 64.9% of our budget is spent directly on the classroom. You have candidates that say that 75 cents of every dollar should be sent, but we'll look at some reasons why that may not be why that is not possible. One is utilities have to be provided, and that's about 1.4% of our budget. Teaching in a hot, cold classroom really does impact the learning of our students. We do have to provide transportation to help make sure that our students can attend schools safely, and we have laws that we have to follow within that. Administrators, building principals, in which providing support for students that are struggling, providing academic instruction and coaching to us to become betters, and leading our buildings through those things that make us better in pedagogy. Providing food services. Students that are hungry just don't learn, so we have to provide foods, free and reduced lunches. Huge reason that we have those. Libraries, computer labs, teaching, training, increasing in our skills and the teacher trainings to become better at our craft as teachers. I use my librarian often to find resources or to evaluate what I'm doing and increase the rigor for my students in my classroom. There's multiple librarians that across the district, all of our librarians across the district, are providing access to literacy, helping our students become better readers early and engaged readers early on, helps increase their ability to become college and career ready. There's lots of great things that are happening in our district libraries. Computer labs, having the technology available, again, is very important. Last but not least, nurses, social workers, counselors, those individuals are on the front lines of making sure that our students' needs of both physical and mental are being met. And social workers are running great resources out to help parents and families that are in struggle, in crisis, and helping them work through and maintain. Counselors working to help support students through not only planning for the future and what they want to do, but also mental health areas as well. Nurses are often becoming the front line of, is this something that I should go see a doctor for, across the nation? And so without nurses in our building to apply just medicine that is needed, but also helping students with those mental health services too that they need, and providing that screening to say, hey, you might need to go to a doctor for this. And then as a special ed teacher, school psychologists, speech pathologists, OTs, PTs, providing those direct services so that those students get the services that they need, so that they can be individuals that are ready for being productive members of society. So if you add that all up, 90.5% of our dollars that are spent in Salina Public Schools directly goes to supporting our students. Briefly, these are the different areas in which our students are being supported with additional dollars. So access to qualified educators. That's you and I in the classroom, and having a salary and benefits that will help with recruitment and retention. We're facing one of the smallest classes getting ready to graduate teacher preparation programs, so it's very difficult to find educators. All Day K, that is now a part of the school funding from the state. That was not there. It used to be half a day. Access to qualified support staff, having those people that help make sure our schools are safe and secure and clean and ready. So those aides that help out, secretaries that provide those much needed services. Special ed funding, while is not at the level required by state law, districts continue to have to provide that. We've seen increases in that. If there aren't increases or if there's reductions to that, districts still have to provide special ed services, and districts are having to make tough choices of where does that money come from. And that may mean that they have to take money from the general fund and put into special ed. The district has made free athletics and activities to help provide our students a way to be part of the school culture, which is essential to helping academics. Fine arts and libraries. Students that are engaged in fine arts again, feel a part of a school culture and are able to express themselves. Libraries in which they provide those services that are needed. There's districts that are having to make tough decisions of it if there should be librarians in their buildings. So that is something that our district has continued to provide. And then access to college and career ready classes to help our students that want to achieve an industry recognized um, certificate upon graduation so that they can be productive members of society or go off and be ready for college. Looking at a few reasons why to vote and why your vote is so important, the Kansas GOP primary for governor is a prime example in which the decision was made by just a few voters. There's some reports that there's school districts in Johnson County in which there was a turnout of 20% of educators during the Kansas primary. Had 50% of those educators turned out, so from those districts very well could have changed the outcome in the Kansas GOP primary, which would maybe change the overall message that we're hearing about schools. A couple other examples and from the Kansas elections, the 2018 Kansas primary for the 104th district, which is in the Hutchinson area, that was decided by 9 votes. So those that decided to vote had a huge impact in their election of who their representative. And so did those that did not vote. They also had a huge impact on the outcome of that race. Even closer to home, from the 2016 general election, when you're looking at the race between J.R. Clays and Jarrett Morris, that is a huge difference there. Not a huge difference in numbers there, a very small difference when you're looking at voting. So here's some ways that you can make sure that you're ready to vote for education, public education, this November 6th. Make sure you're registered to vote by going to kansasvotes.org. You can also vote from home, and you have to request that by going to www.kansasvotes.org. You can request that your ballot be sent to your home and that you can do it from the comfort of your home. The deadline to register is October 16th by 8 p.m. Make sure that you're educated on the issues and how it will impact your students. NEA Salina, it will work to communicate through our social media platforms, which you see at the bottom of the screen. And we've opened up a new section of our webpage for the elections, nea-salina.org/elections, in which you can learn about the candidates and where they stand on the issues. And finally, make the pledge to vote. Talk to your neighbors, family, and friends about voting. You can vote from home again starting October 17th. You do have to request that from the Saline County Clerk. You can also, by contacting her directly, or you can go to kansasvotes.org and find the application there. You can vote early. The Saline County building will start early voting October 23rd through November 5th. And they're planning some late nights. So make sure you look for some dates and some messages about that from the Saline County Clerk. If you do not live in Saline County, make sure that you check with your local county clerk because dates can change from county to county. And last but not least, make sure that you vote on November 6th from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. in Saline County. Again, check your local county clerk with them to make sure that you know what time the polling place is open and where they're at. You can find your polling place at ksvotes.org, that one-stop shop. We thank you for listening to this presentation and watching this presentation, and we ask that you vote for public education this November.